one thing I really wanted to kind of just lay a foundation for the for this conversation. I know for me, I really didn't know until I met you, and you kind of started breaking it down for me in terms that I could understand as kind of a layman, somebody that didn't understand the economy and money and how money is created, the Federal Reserve and the Treasury, and how all these different institutions sort of create our financial system. And so I
Yeah.
figured we could start there, which I think can lay a foundation for some of the things that we're seeing with the banks and big corporations, and money that's being given through the CARES Act. And so I think we could start there. And if you could do your
Sure.
best to tell us, you know, where does money come from?
Oh man, where does it come from? That's a good question. Well, depends on what your definition of money is. You know, Currently, most currencies in the world are all fiat currencies, meaning that they get their power essentially from government dictate. So governments have told us that this is currency and that you must accept it in payment for goods. Um, and as a lot of people know, currently the Federal Reserve is who prints our money. So if you look at every dollar bill, it'll say Federal Reserve note across the top. And yeah, at some point we can go into a lot deeper on that and the whole history of just even like the currency of the United States and how it sort of gets its name, the greenback, which was actually coming out of the Civil War, where they printed them in green ink. But long story short, our current monetary system is a debt-based system, and like I said, it's also fiat, meaning really nothing backs it except for the will of the government, and really a government's ability to tax its people. So that's always the implicit guarantee behind pretty much every world currency right now, is that the government has reserved the right to tax the citizens and essentially make up whatever that future IOU payment is for. And really, we were on a gold standard historically in this country, and we left that in 1971. So Richard Nixon, took us off the gold standard, and that's probably again we'll have to maybe do an in-depth one on that sometime. But long story short, we had a gold-based system, and France asked for their gold, and we didn't really have it, or we didn't want to give it up, essentially. So Nixon took us off the gold standard, and since that point, there's really nothing that backs our currency other than the blood, sweat, and tears of the U.S. taxpayer.
Absolutely. And how did you get into to kind of keeping your eye on these things? Was it something you've always been? Where do you get a lot of
It's a
this
good question.
information? Where do you get a lot of your information? Because I think it's important that if people want to do their own research, you can watch this and take it for face value, but you could also do your own
Yep.
research and base an opinion off of, your own research. And
Sure.
so,
It's so I guess I'm computer scientist. And I've always been into math, and I've always been curious really about stocks and how markets work. I mean, I remember we did a market simulation in middle school, and I just sort of found that interesting. And then we did another one again in high school, and I actually won it in my class. I don't remember if it was just the classroom or if it was my wider grade, but sadly, I didn't actually buy this in real life, but it was a company called Fuel Cell, and they were investigating fuel cell battery technologies. And in during the course of this stock market simulation, I bought it at $2 and sold it at 110, and that was I don't know if it was the time frame, but it was maybe a month or maybe 3 months, something like that. But obviously, it was at the right point in time, and I had just been happening to research it and look into it. And interesting, if you go back and look at it too, that was definitely like a bubble, late '90s, when we're going through a lot of those. Really, again, I feel like central bank, Federal Reserve bubbles that they sort of blow throughout the periods, but that was the really the height of the dot-com bubble. Um, And what's interesting about that technology too is I believe it was ExxonMobil ended up buying that company, but ExxonMobil and a couple of the other oil companies bought a lot of that fuel cell technology and just sort of sat on it because they have other means of selling us energy. So, but that obviously having success at that, it made it interesting. Actually, my first dip into the stock market, I bought 3DFX, I believe the company's name was, but they were a competitor with NVIDIA back in the day. And you might not remember them because they went bust. NVIDIA beat them in a big chip war. And so I believe my grandmother had given me like $500 or something as some type of payment one time. She told us to invest that she had some money and gave me and my two brothers $500. And I bought 3DFX stock and it went to zero.
Wow.
I learned that lesson.
You got a really early lesson. That's great. Thanks, Grandma.
Yeah.
Life lessons.
Yeah.